Look, we all want to know what's coming next, right? But what if a computer model said it could actually forecast the fate of entire nations? It's a huge claim. So today, we're not just going to look at the predictions, we're going to look at the proof. We're going to test the crystal ball.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? When you've got a bold new idea, especially one that claims to see the future, trust isn't just given, it has to be earned. So before we even peek at what this digital oracle has to say, we have to ask how it works. And more importantly, how do we know it isn't just, making stuff up? This is the story of how that trust gets built.
So what is this thing? It's called CAMS, the Complex Adaptive Model for Societal Systems. And its core idea is pretty wild. It treats an entire society like it's one giant neural network. But instead of neurons firing off in a brain, CAMS is modeling the core parts of a nation and how they all react to stress.
These are the 8 neurons that CAMS says are fundamental to pretty much any society, whether you're talking about ancient Rome or modern-day America. You've got the executive, the army, knowledge workers. Each one is like a node in this massive network, and the way they're all connected determines how the whole system behaves.
And this brings us to the model's most powerful, game-changing idea: stress. In the CAMS model, stress isn't just some bad outcome, like a headache. No, it acts more like a neuromodulator. Think of it like adrenaline or cortisol flooding your own brain. It doesn't just make you feel bad, it fundamentally changes how you think, how you react. That's what stress does to the society in this model. It's the engine that drives everything.
All right, so with a model this ambitious, this out there, you can't just take its word for it. It has to be put through the ringer. So its creators designed something they call the validation gauntlet, basically an intense, multi-stage trial by fire designed to find every single weakness and break it if they could.
And this gauntlet is incredibly thorough. I mean, it covers everything from making sure the history books were read right, to checking the core math, to just throwing insane scenarios at it to see if it breaks. For our purposes, we're going to zoom in on 2 of the most critical trials: the reality check and the big one, the predictive test.
First up, does the model even make sense with the past? Can it look at historical data and see the same storm clouds that historians saw? This is the most basic test, but honestly, it's one of the most important. If it fails this, nothing else matters.
And here's a perfect example of how that test works. Take the Syrian civil war, which really erupted in 2011. The CAMS model, when it crunched all the data from the year before, in 2010, saw a huge spike in the country's stress metrics. It basically saw the pressure building up in the system right before it blew.
Now, the crucial thing here is, this wasn't some lucky guess. The scientists set a hard pass-fail line. The correlation between the model's stress readings and actual historical crises had to be stronger than 0.75. The model came back with about 0.82. That's a clear, solid pass. The model is officially grounded in reality.
Okay, so the model is a pretty good historian. That's impressive. But that just leads to the even tougher question. Can it predict the future? This is where we find out if it's just a smart history book or if it's something more. A true digital oracle.
To figure this out, they used a really clever method called a backtesting protocol. Here's how it works. They fed the model all the historical data they had, but only up to the year 2005. Then, they asked it to forecast what would happen between 2010 and 2015. The key here is, the model had absolutely no idea that the Arab Spring was about to happen. It was flying blind into the future.
So, how did it do? The pass criteria was tough. It had to predict major crises with over 70% accuracy. And CAMS hit 75%. That is another clean, decisive pass. It successfully saw a world-changing event coming, an event that, from its point of view, hadn't even happened yet.
And this wasn't just some vague, I feel trouble brewing kind of prediction. This is really important. The model's predictions are based on strict mathematical rules. As you can see here, it only flags a red alert when very specific thresholds get crossed, like if a cascade condition is met, where one problem starts a domino effect, or if the odds of a major societal shift stay dangerously high for at least 3 years straight. It's a disciplined warning system, not a psychic hotline. So after being thrown into this brutal trial by fire, this validation gauntlet, what was the final verdict on the CAMS model? Did it make it through?
If you look at the full scorecard, you can really see just how comprehensive this whole thing was.
Every single one of those validation phases had a different weight, based on how important it was, and each had its own tough pass-fail line. From the data itself to the predictions, every single piece of this model was put under a microscope. And the final result? An overall weighted validation score of 85%, well over the pass threshold. The model survives the gauntlet. This right here is why validation is so significant. It's not about just building a cool tool. It's about proving scientifically that you can actually trust what that tool tells you.
And that, right there, brings us to the real payoff. We've established this model as a trustworthy lens for looking at the world. So what happens when we look through that lens? What patterns, what futures can we see that were invisible to us before?
We've gone through the rigorous science, we've established the trust. Now, finally, we can look at its most significant prediction, a glimpse into where our incredibly complex world might actually be heading.
The model predicts that somewhere between 2035 and 2045, our world is going to start trending towards something it calls a fragmented resilience attractor. It's a really counterintuitive idea, and it kind of challenges everything we think we know about globalization.
So what on earth is fragmented resilience? Well, the model predicts that our huge, hyper-complex global systems, our supply chains, our financial networks, all of it, are going to become too stressed out and begin to break apart. But, and this is the absolute key, this isn't just a story about collapse, it's a story of reorganization. A future where smaller, more self-sufficient, and more nimble regional clusters start to emerge from the pieces.
And why does the model predict this? It's not a guess. It's based on the very metrics we just spent all this time validating. First, the health scores for most major nations are already below a critical risk level. Second, there's something called the abstraction paradox. Our global systems have gotten so complex that they're fragile, and that makes any kind of stress way worse. And finally, these systems have shown a really low capacity to bounce back from shocks. They're brittle. When the model puts all that together, fragmentation isn't just a possibility, it becomes the most likely path forward.
Which leaves us with a provocative final question. We've proven the model is a tool we can trust, and it's predicting this future of fragmentation. So is that a grim forecast? Is it the end of the world as we know it? Or could it be a necessary, maybe painful, but ultimately needed correction? A path towards more human scale, more resilient, and maybe, just maybe, more adaptive ways of living together. That's the question this validated crystal ball leaves us to ponder.